welcome to the weekly peer-to-peer psychedelic guide support. I'm Ashley, the founder of PGN, and just wanted to share some disclaimers for this weekly space. This is a community discussion and essentially a community exploration around ethics and psychedelic guiding. It's meant for educational purposes. So before moving forward in any actions with your clients, please be sure to consult your dedicated professionals, whether it be a mentor or a peer consultation group. I'm here holding the space. I'm not the supervisor. I am not the only mind. We move forward and prioritize the hive mind. So it's the community mind that is taking priority in this space. This mini wisdom circle peer-to-peer support group discussion is being recorded. We hope that there is a lot of rich ethical material that comes out of these discussions, but also respect privacy and confidentiality. So if you are going to share and you would like your image, your voice, your name blurred, please let us know. Myself or PGN lead, our admin here, will make sure that all of your information before we put it on our channel that's going to be open is kept private and made confidential. And as a reminder, these are hypothetical discussions, so you technically don't have to disclose any personal identifying information, and please don't, as a best practice, disclose any personal identifying information about your clients. And with just 30 minutes, we'll explore one topic, one consult per week. So if you'd like to present, you can shoot me an email. We'll make sure that you get on the list. And finally, I would like to introduce and start with some group agreements that we have for our wisdom circles really quickly. And so I'm going to share screen for that. And in our member portal, we have our group agreements. So please maintain the integrity of the container. Be sure to stay on the whole time if you join us. Share the mic. There may be other people with feedback, so be mindful of how much space you're taking. One person shares at a time. Use your Zoom reaction hand and maintain confidentiality of the group. As I shared, this will be put on our open YouTube channel, but please maintain confidentiality around identifying information for yourself and for your clients. Take care of yourself, remain safe. So make sure that you're speaking from your perspective. Take responsibility for your boundaries. If there's something you desire more or less, you can name it. And let's maintain the positive, unconditional regard of all of our peers in this space. We're a diverse group. If you're comfortable, please keep your Zoom video on as we're connecting around really intense topics. It's nice to see faces to trust and see the person as we're exploring these things together. Are there any other group agreements that you require in this space in order to feel safe? Cool. We're all in agreement. And so with this space, I really, I want to invite in topics. I have some things to explore around ethics, but really the priority is for those that have shown up. And so if you have a topic around ethics that you'd like to discuss, that you want to explore in here, it could be about anything, please let me know. Should we go with the topic that I've chosen for today? Okay. So the topic that I've chosen is sexual energy. When there's sexual energy in the room with a client. For example, let's say we're working with a client that has a history of emotional neglect, emotional abandonment on the paternal side. And you are a male facilitator and you have done your preparation with this client. Nothing has come up in your dynamic with the client between you two in terms of sexual energy, romanticism. And in the medicine space, the client is expressing and projecting feelings onto you, and sharing how good looking you are in this space, and is really complimentary of you. What would we do in that situation? How would you respond to a client? Any ideas?
Yeah, I'm not sure, but first of all, as a guide, recognizing that it's not quite meant for you, yeah, but that's the experience of client, and maybe being curious there, asking questions, for example, that qualities that are attractive. So kind of shifting maybe attention from personal you to more about experience and expectations and something missing in client's life, my guess. Thank you.
Beautiful. Yeah. And I shared as I was describing the vignette, the situation a little bit, I used the word projection, right? And so that is such a wonderful way to work with it in the room, right? Is to first, I think, realize and know, excuse me, that this is a projection. The client is projecting these romantic feelings, projecting this attraction onto you, and there's something there for the client. It actually has very little to do with you, and there's gold here, there's unpacking here to explore with the client. I think it's really important to talk about sexual energy and normalize it as any other energy, as a depressed energy, as an anxious energy, as a joyful, blissful, euphoric energy, erotic energy. I mean, these are all natural human emotions that we go through. And so I think that there tends to be a bit of a jarring that happens for guides or therapists when they're being projected onto, because hopefully we know that there's no sexual touch, sexual energy exchanged between the two in the medicine space. And it can be alarming, and we get kind of stuck in like, what do we do? How do we respond? And so working with yourself, knowing what you're going to say in response, if and when this does come up, which it does, and we have explored this in many of our wisdom circles, this has happened. And so instead of becoming really shocked by it or having a strong reaction to it, because the client's hypersensitive to that, to you and your energetic body in this space, you want to normalize these emotions. You want to normalize these energies and really keep a safe container, keep a safe space for expression of these. We don't engage with it or reciprocate, but we normalize and ask questions like that. What's in here for you? I'm curious if this has come up with others. How is this related to your intention? What is this revealing for you in your healing journey? So that's a great suggestion.
I guess it's also, and if it's really touched or puzzled or whatever, got emotions in guide, opportunity to later discuss it with a mentor and work over material.
Yeah. Yeah, and hopefully we have those spaces, right, where we have a mentor or we have a supervisor or you have a peer consultation group or a trusted confidant that you consult with to talk about what came up for you, because maybe it was enjoyable. Maybe you yourself as a guide have been in a space of loneliness and desiring some admiration. And so maybe the countertransference was it evoked something for you and you enjoyed it. And so that's one thing to really explore, is what happened for you when that came into the room. What was your personal material? How did your countertransference interact with the client's transference towards you? And there's no wrong answer to that. We're all in different places. But where we want to be really diligent is in how we do or don't engage and what our next step is and what happens after. You become aware of your reaction to the material. And so We don't want to react to it, we want to respond to it. And so becoming practiced in how you respond, becoming aware and constantly working with yourself in personal development and knowing how these things may or may not be interacting with your own personal material. And yes, knowing how to respond. So consulting with somebody or with a group around these types of situation is really important.
Also wondering if somehow we can prepare for that, because usually we don't see our client on the journey first time, so we have quite few sessions before, and maybe observing what kind of relationship is going on. Is it more on like horizontal level, or the client maybe doesn't quite trust you or looking too much up to you, and maybe even preparing yourself and expecting that something can come up during the journey. Any suggestion around that? What to say? Like,
Yeah, you know, I think to your first point, yes, hopefully there have been enough preparation sessions. There is a good feel for what the rapport looks like, what the relational dynamic is with the client. Because it may not always be romantic. It may be brotherly or sisterly or paternal or maternal. We can enter into these different roles with the clients, depending on where they're at and what their needs are and the material that they're working through. And so, yes, hopefully we have a good idea of the rapport before going into the session. And so something like this isn't a surprise. And the second, piece to your question is how do we prepare? I'd like to bring in agreements. This is a good opportunity if the client is relentless or consistent in pursuing you, or constantly complimenting, or just maintaining the sexual energy with you in the space. I think this is really a good case for why it's important to have agreements and boundaries for the relationship and for the journey. And one of the agreements that would be very helpful in this situation is making it known that there is no sexual touch, there is no sexual energy exchanged between the client and between the guide or the facilitator, and that we hold the boundary of the relationship for the client's highest good. And maintaining that boundary and not engaging, even if the client is continuously pursuing, is an example of being a good enough parent, or being a good enough fill in the blank, by holding that boundary, by being a good enough guide and holding the boundary despite the client's constant pursuits.
Yeah, maybe I have a question here. I heard lately a few times when clients said, it looks now the pattern is that the guide is sitting and making notes, and try to be as less engaged as possible. And we talked about that, But now I hear clients say, I really want to talk, I want to interact. And I was wondering how much, like for example, in this situation where you brought that the client looking at the male guide as a father, if it would be just a regular session, like, I'm not sure I'm right, but I would say, it looks like you see me as a father, what would you like to hear from your father? And I can maybe play that role, but help me, what you need to hear. So, but it's a regular session. What would be the best in a journey space? Because the perception is kind of distorted. And what is proper in regular session might be not working in a journey space. So in that example, what would you do?
So, well, the first kind of question, I want to make sure I understand your question, because the first part, and open to thoughts. I also want to say that I don't consider myself the expert on this material, and I'm just sharing my thoughts and my position on it. But the first part being around how much do we engage or take back and sit notes and be kind of disengaged, and then the second part is about where clients kind of step into whatever the projected role is onto the guide, in order to provide a corrective healing experience by offering an affirmation, offering forgiveness, offering acknowledgement, whatever it is that the client needs. And so what is the question around that?
Maybe what exactly would you say? Let's say you are this male guide and the client looking up to you, and sexual or just like, oh, you are like a god, you are my perfect father, and so on. So what do you say?
Mhm.
I understand it depends maybe on circumstances, but maybe some options.
Yeah. Can we, yeah, with the language that you've used, I use the language that they use to make sure that that's really good active listening and reflection for them. You're noticing the God in me, but what about the God in you? We are reflections for them. And so everything that they're projecting out, they actually hold within themselves. And so I'm so great in your eyes. You're noticing this greatness. Where is your greatness? How do you feel about your greatness? How can you can you connect to the power that you hold within you? I would also return it to them, just like with the attraction piece, and invite them into connecting with and knowing their own God or greatness or whatever it is that they're projecting onto the guide in that moment. And so that's how I would work with it in this space. And the other piece I just want to make sure is clear is it's also really important for guides to keep on doing their personal work and to be in consultation, because that can also be really, really nice for the ego to hear. The ego likes to be complimented and noticed, and we can get inflated egos if we take this in and assume this position of greatness because the client's in an altered space and projecting that onto us. And so that's one way to work with the client. And it's also incredibly important for a guide to have the awareness of what's happening in the room so that they don't assume this role of greatness over the client and kind of continue to perpetuate that they are the greatest person in the room and go into their own personal stuff around it without, we're in service to the client without making this about the client and working with the client in it. Well, a bit of a short session today, but some heavy things unpacked. And, your second part might have been also a great lead in for next week. So maybe with a larger room and more thoughts, more minds in the room, a good discussion point to bring in for next week, for next week's peer-to-peer psychedelic support group. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you all for watching from home. We hope that this was fruitful for you, and we'll see you next week.